Okay, let's talk headless. You tired? Everybody focusing on emails and stuff, just trying to get attention because now it's the most funny moment of the presentation. I want to start with a little bit of humor. Depending on who you talk to, traditional approach to web development looks like that, and I will dig deeper around this meme. Actually, my talk was triggered by this blog post of Dries. He published this one in December 2023. Anybody read that as well? Yeah? It's actually a very interesting reaction of, let's say, our founder of the Drupal project, because Drupal was always criticized about being traditional or hybrid, and there is all this new technology like the MACH architecture or Jamstack and everything, and it's actually the first public reaction to that in a sense that he's kind of explaining, well, we're doing well, and etc., etc. And I like the points what he made up, and I build on that point, so I will come back to that. I highly recommend that you read that post. First, I thought that I would mention, or I would call my presentation, the future of Drupal should be headless, but also depending on who you call, who you talk to, they will say maybe the future of Drupal is tweak, or single components, or, well, it's hybrid, and oh no, it's actually the Gutenberg editor, and it's React, oh no, it's Next.js, no, it's Nuxt.js, it's Svelte-Kit. So what is actually the future if we talk about modern website infrastructures? And that's actually my question. So what is the role of Drupal in a modern digital experience stack? And where should we invest to stay relevant in the next 5 years as a content management system? So these are the two questions I try to answer. And, well, my answer is already the future is headless, but there is one small point to it. I would call it a headless core platform. And I will explain what I mean by that in this presentation. So the agenda is, I will look into a little bit of data. So it's not only my opinion, but also like I try to make some foundations and show some trends. Then I will explain quickly the different architectures, and then I will make a conclusion out of it. Is that okay for you? Sounds interesting? Cool. So my name is Lukas. I'm the founder of NetNode. We are a Drupal agency in Switzerland, and I'm mostly geeking about digital strategy and web technology. I'm also, in my spare time, passionate gardener. This is actually the beds prepared from last year, but looking pretty similar these years. I'm also a passionate composter, so actually I could stop talking about Drupal and start talking about composting if you like to. And if I find time, I'm also on a bike. And just for full transparency, we are building noive. Noive is a headless CMS solution built on top of Drupal. And the goal is to have a go-to solution. If you want to build a headless solution with Drupal, you get that out of the box. So we leverage a lot of Drupal core features, country features, but build stuff on top. So you get a headless multi-site solution with more or less one command. Many features, I don't want to go into too much detail, but what we try to solve is you have noive as a headless system, Drupal powered, and you can serve multiple fully decoupled front ends very easily. You can try it yourself, it's open source. We offer a SaaS solution, but you can also self-host it. We have 2 GitHub repos, one for the backend and one for the front end for Next.js starter, so you can immediately start building front ends. So let's start with the statistics and trends. And for this, I looked into Google Trends, built with Stack Overflow and GitHub reports. So I looked up the common traditional CMSs, and if you look at Drupal, and this actually worries me a little bit, the traction or the high peak is over. So this data shows from 2004 on the left to today, and I also added the Drupal core releases at the bottom, and it seems that Drupal 7 was the peak of Drupal as a keyword, Google Trends on Google.com, obviously. But it's going down. WordPress, actually similar story. WordPress powers over 20% of top million websites, but interest is not going up, so it's going down. Typo 3, data shows everything. Symfony as a programming framework, quite steady actually, so it's not doing bad, I would say. Let's look into data about headless CMSs. The term headless CMS, obviously it started in 2015 where the Jamstack was introduced by Netlify, and ever since it's growing and it's prime time now. So people seem to be interested about headless CMSs. If you look into vendors, Contentful, prime time today. Strapi, a JavaScript-powered headless CMS, prime time today. Sanity, also popular, became very popular within last 2-3 years, prime time now. Storyblock, similar story, prime time now. All headless CMSs skyrocket right now. Content Stack, more in the enterprise segment, is also growing, and the interest is definitely not declining, but actually growing. I also took in Webflow. It's not a headless CMS in that sense, but low-code, no-code solution, also prime time. And by the way, if you're interested in comparison between these headless CMSs, we made a session at DrupalCon Lille where we compared Sanity, Contentful, Strapi with Drupal and what we can learn from them. So it also was an interesting talk, and if you're interested what others are doing, I highly recommend to watch the video. I also looked into front-end tech. Well, jQuery, certainly not at its prime time. React, pretty much prime time now. Next.js, super prime time now. Nox.js, I would still say going strong. I don't know why it's lower or what this peak was actually about. SvelteKit, prime time. If you compare the different front-end frameworks, you see that Next.js is the most popular one. Nox.js also popular. SvelteKit's still young and different approach. If you compare the frameworks or basically the libraries, React is doing strongest, Vue.js also doing well, but if you add Twig in the sauce, it's nowhere. And Twig is our default stack to build frontends in Drupal. I also looked to overarching trends, so just composable commerce is kicking off since 2 years. I would say mostly driven by marketing of big vendors. Jamstack had its prime time around 2019, is also kind of declining. Microservices, just as a buzzword, is also kind of trendy these days. I also looked into top 1 million websites in the world, and on BuildWith you have these statistics. I don't know exactly how much you can trust them. I don't know exactly how they gather the data, but it's at least one data point we can take. And this is in the category of open source CMSs. And you see WordPress is at the top with over 22% of the 1 million total websites. And Drupal is actually doing quite strong. So it's 2.3%, and that's cool. But what worries me is this graph. In 2020, kind of peaked on BuildWith in the top million pages. Sorry, this is top 10K pages. It goes down. So it seems that we as Drupal solution providers, or Drupal solution is losing market share. If you look at headless installations, you see that Contentful is #1, but with the quite low percentage, or at least 6 times lower than Drupal as a system. But what's interesting is that there is an upwards trend. So it seems that more and more people are adopting these headless CMSs. And this is the graph of Contentful as an example. I looked into programming languages as well to understand if PHP is actually the cool kid around the corner, or where are we actually with PHP? And if you look at the top tech companies in the world, and you look what technology they use, can you see PHP? It's actually one company that is dedicatedly using PHP is Facebook. Everybody else is not using PHP at all of the big tech. It doesn't seem something, I mean, it's just a fact that it's like that. Doesn't mean that PHP is bad or something, but it's just interesting data to think about it. Also, if you look at the Stack Overflow developer report of last year, there is this very famous most admired and desired programming languages, and at the top is JavaScript and also Python, and PHP is maybe rank 10 or 11 or so. So what I want to say here, it's still in the top 10. It's not like off the, whatever, somewhere else. Also, if you look at the GitHub report, you see at the top JavaScript since a decade, basically. Python grew, probably because of AI. TypeScript also grew massively. PHP is steadily going down. So if I'm, let's say, 22-year-old developer, what technology I'm going to focus on? Probably JavaScript, Python, TypeScript, maybe not PHP. Top 10 languages in 2023, obviously it's JavaScript all over, but PHP, where is PHP? It's actually still doing strong, right? Also, I find this is very interesting. What is the percentage growth? So, of course, the new kits like Rust got the most traction or most growth. But what's interesting is that PHP is actually growing. So it's not that it's dying, but it's actually growing. That's also interesting to see. It's not growing as fast as other languages, but it's still growing. So what I wanted to show you is a little bit a perspective from outside of our bubble, Drupal bubble. And it's clearly, and we have to admit, that PHP, Drupal, or the whole ecosystem we are part of, it's kind of going down. Whereas on the other side, we have all these fancy new JavaScript, TypeScript, headless tools. They have a clear uptrend. And it's kind of worrying, you know, and what are we talking about in the Drupal community to actually react on that trends? So that's the first part. I have some good news as well also. So let's dive into the different architectures. And it was so funny when I was preparing the presentation. Oh, sorry, I still try to get an answer for these questions. What is Drupal's role in the modern digital experience stack? And also where we should actually invest. So that's still, I'm still curious, how can we answer that? What is the answer to these questions? So when I made research about the different architectures, you can obviously search on Google, and then you find all these nice graphics and diagrams from all these vendors. Also, Acquia provided the complex one. Yeah, I just want to show that because everybody has a meaning about this topic and whatever composable means and what is a hybrid CMS, etc. I want to present my view on these architectures so we have a common understanding. So this is the typical traditional monolith architecture. We have one system, the content management system, and we probably have a plugin system where we can install additional features, functionality, and the front end is part of that monolith architecture. That's when you download Drupal today, this is the approach. This was the approach 20 years ago. The typical vendors are Drupal, WordPress, Typo 3. This is the declining stack, I would say. Then there is the headless stack. It's actually similar if you simplify it. The only thing is they take out the front end and you access data through an API. Voilà. Typical vendors are Strapi, Sanity, Contentful, Prismic. There are lots, it's quite a crowded market, and lots of new tools appeared in the last 3-4 years. Then there is hybrid. So that's also what Dries was pushing, and we as a Drupal community were pushing. So let's just say, oh, we have an API, and then we can do decoupled solutions, but we still keep the good old front end because why not? So basically, that's the hybrid headless approach. Then there is the Jamstack. I would consider Jamstack as basically a headless architecture. You still have the CMS, you have the API, but what you usually do, or that was the initial goal of the Jamstack, is once you deploy your site and the content, it gets pre-rendered, and in the end you have a static site generation which you can host on a CDN, which is then basically your front end. So you have more or less infinite scalability, and you don't need any longer the CMS in the back. So it's like a static site generated. And then there is the new shiny thing, and Dries was not only positive about it, it's a lot of marketing talk, but it's actually interesting to see how they sell it and how it works. So basically what they say, we are no longer monolith, so we create microservices. For example, we have a content repository, the CMS. We have a commerce stack, microservice, and DAM, CRM, whatever you want to call it, whatever you think of microservices. And they are all cloud native, SaaS-based typically. And then you have a decoupled front end in the front. And what they usually don't tell you clearly is that even though it should be composable and just plug and play, you need some kind of API management layer or orchestrator or app builder, whatever they call it, which then aggregates again these APIs to one single consumable API. So it's easier for front-end developers to integrate. Vendors are HighGraph, Content Stack, Builder.io. There are also other solutions that are in this stack. And this is actually an architecture from Content Stack. I downloaded it from the documentation of Content Stack. And if you look at it, so this is the Content Stack product. Then you have all these microservices. Google Analytics, for them, is a microservice. Commerce tools, okay. Binder, we just had before the presentation about Binder and how you can integrate it in Drupal. Also Marketo forms. It's actually very interesting. You need a microservice to capture form input data. Why not? You can call that a microservice. Anyway, Content Stack then will kind of aggregate these or integrate these and then provide an API so you can build your decoupled front end, which is typically one of these frameworks, JavaScript frameworks I mentioned before. And then you have, again, some kind of CDN, and then you have the client. The end client not only goes through the Content Stack APIs, but also pulls data from whatever microservice is needed. And that's actually interesting. Once you have a decoupled front end, you can directly call microservices in the back. This is not possible in the traditional approach, or usually if you are rendering in Twig, you don't go from Twig directly to a third-party service. It doesn't make sense. But when I was looking at this, and I thought, damn, this is actually Drupal. And indeed, this is one of our projects we are working on. So basically, this is our Drupal layer node hive. And we have a couple of microservices, point of sale system, campaign monitor, Salesforce, Vimeo provider. Some of them talk to Drupal first, then we provide APIs to multiple front ends. But Drupal as a core platform, headless core platform, provides us with web forms already. So we have this microservice already provided by the core platform. We have commerce, so we don't need to have that outside. We can if we want. So that's interesting, right? So come to the conclusion. I see Drupal as a headless core platform. I show this again. So if we simplify that again, Drupal is the core platform in a modern stack, is the core platform with microservices included in the Drupal ecosystem, that's in the middle layer, but then also integrates with many microservices outside. But then, by default at least, Drupal is not decoupled, but this is what I'm advocating for. We have then the ability to add decoupled front ends in the front. So Drupal is supporting MACH, so it's basically MACH architecture already, and Drupal is headless basically now. But Drupal is not seen as such, and that's a big, big issue. Still mentioning, oh, it's traditional, oh, it's hybrid. And I actually made a test a couple of months ago on Reddit. I asked in the React subreddit, and it's like quite a lot of members there, what is your go-to headless CMS and why? And the answer was Strapi, Contentful, all this headless system. No single person mentioned Drupal as a potential solution for a headless system. Even though we just learned that it's the perfect solution to build your decoupled systems on top. I think this is very sad, and we should improve that. And by the way, there were over 100 comments in it. So what is the Drupal's role in the modern digital experience stack? My answer is, it's the headless core platform. As I showed this one before, this is the answer. This is a typical project. This is the architectural thoughts about it. Where should we invest to stay relevant in the next 5 years? And this is my personal opinion or my personal suggestions to us. I think we should do bold decisions and bold moves. And I would really advocate to replace the theming layer, so really go headless and support all the big front-end frameworks out of the box. Offer standard SDKs, so integration with Drupal backend systems is easy from whatever front-end framework. Preston was advocating for that yesterday as well. Then also recreate the admin UI. It really feels outdated if you compare to all these new headless CMSs like Strapi and all they're much snappier. Also move code to GitHub. I think it was not a good idea. It was a good idea to go away from Drupal.org, but not a good idea to go to GitLab, because we keep the island. You know, if you are a JavaScript developer, you would never go to GitLab, Drupal GitLab. Why? And then you have you wouldn't do that. If you are a new front-end developer and you're familiar with GitHub and you can push your changes or wishes on GitHub itself, that would help a lot to attract these younger folks who focusing more on JavaScript, the top one language. And 5, and that's actually the most easiest one, I think we should just talk, when we talk about Drupal, as the headless core platform for composable digital ecosystem. Sounds like marketing, but why not? So to summarize, statistics and trends showed that headless and JavaScript front-end frameworks have a lot of traction. Now, this is quite a new trend. It's 3-4 years old. In architectures, headless is here to stay. It offers much more flexibility. It's attractive for JavaScript developers to adopt Drupal as a system. So conclusion is, again, Drupal should be seen as headless core platform, and we should adopt the modern front-end tech now. If you're interested, noive.com, this is our product. And I actually wanted to quickly demo how that is. So if you are a front-end developer and you would decide to go with Drupal as a headless core platform using Noive, and how easy it is, I quickly show you. So basically what I do here is I just made a small install script. So this will pull our Next.js front-end starter. So this is open source. Then I will open up the code editor because I show a couple of stuff. And then I just start the local node server. this is the decoupled front end. It's not the back end. The back end is already as a SaaS, demo.noive.app, I think it is. So how does that work? So I just run this. So node server has already started. So when I go to localhost, this is now my front end. Next.js, fully powered, already loading data from the backend. I have menus, I have paragraphs here, I have the JSON API output, and I can now start theming. For example, and this is just really a short demo, I won't explain Next.js as a solution. But for example, we have then components. So we have, for example, nodes and paragraphs. If I want to edit the main node, so this is the React component. Let's say I want to change the color, text red 500. So it gets refreshed and it's already styled. Also, if I want, for example, in the header, I want to show social media icons. So I just copy paste that component. I load a different Drupal menu because I know there is a menu called social media. I can just copy paste that and voila, I have a different menu there. So this is what I'm talking about as a front-end developer. I want this experience and I don't want to, first find out how I can disable the cache system, so tweak renders. It doesn't make sense for me. Then the biggest issue when you decouple is how do you actually edit a decoupled site? And in Noive, we also found a solution for that. It's not that fancy as luckily, but let's show that. So our approach is you have to log in on the front end as well. So that's what I'm doing here. Now I get a JWT token from Drupal, so I'm actually authenticated of the Drupal instance. And what you see now is some additional editing buttons, and then I can, and here this is what we called smart visual buttons, so they are context aware and they show stuff depending on where you are on the site. For example, I can also revalidate cache if I want, but then, and that's the most important one, I can open up the visual editor. Now I access the backend or the Noive instance, and from here I have, for example, editing capabilities of the paragraph. If I click here, the sidebar opens, and then I can immediately update that data. I hit save, and this gets refreshed, and then I have that, and now it doesn't work, demo. Why it's not working? Yeah, anyway. We're leveraging a lot of Drupal capabilities. The form is completely provided by paragraphs. The only thing is we write wrapper components, so these edit buttons appear, and refreshing stuff. So it's a light integration of front-end editing capabilities. We have plans to make that much better, but this is what it is at the moment. Yeah, that was the demo. Let's see. Yeah, finally, questions and answers. What do you think? I'm really curious. Is that wrong, what I told you, or does it make sense?
I thought the demo was very cool and very quick. I did have a thing about your suggestions, a question. Okay. So you suggested, you asked why we were going to GitLab, not GitHub. I'm not sure. I heard rumblings that GitLab is open source and GitHub isn't. And then Drupal as an open source system will work with, but I'm not sure. But what do you think about that?
I mean, in the end, do you want to see Drupal dying, or do you want to go where the party takes place? And of course, you can still keep GitLab as a mirror. Actually, now it's also on GitHub mirroring, but nobody is actually at the Drupal party on GitHub. I'm a bit more or a bit less, politically in that sense. I think it's important to think outside the Drupal bubble and actually pull in these young folks, JavaScript people, TypeScript people who are excited about web development, and they are not really going to Drupal at the moment. That's what the data shows, at least. I'm really curious. What do you think, Acquia people?
Can you elaborate a little bit why Drupal is the go-to solution, not Typo 3? I do not know Typo 3 and all the other platforms, but can you explain that?
You mean actually in this graph here? Where was it? Here it's Drupal, but it could also be Typo 3. That's what you're saying, or
why not? Yeah.
I mean, of course, it can also be Typo 3 for sure. I mean, in the end, what Drupal offers today with all its API features, this ecosystem of modules, is like crazy powerful. Content Stack would love to have this. So the capabilities of Drupal today as a headless core platform is already top, but we are not talking about it like that. That's what I don't get. I really don't get it. And you know what's interesting, and I don't know why, I don't know if that's part of the new marketing team. If you go on Drupal.org, you open up why Drupal, content as a service and decoupled is before multilingual and security. It's very interesting. So Drupal.org is also pushing that, but I don't know why we don't think about and talk about it in a 2024 way.
I agree. I feel like we should be going to things like KubeCon to show how powerful Drupal is. Because when I am at these conferences and I talk about Drupal, they're like, I heard about that. That still exists. But if we can show them the power of DrupalCon, another open source system that they could use and harness on top of their systems, I agree. So maybe, Lukas, for the next KubeCon, you can submit a session.
Why not? Yeah, it would be interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm here anyway, and we can discuss it. Thank you to listen, or maybe there is a question, I don't know. Thank you.